Hello everyone, I cordially welcome you all to another video from the React tutorial series, and in this video we are going to discuss about Axios in React. So without any delay, let's get started. In any production grade application, the front end of the application needs to interact with the backend API to send, fetch, update or delete data from the database. For this we use Axios. Axios is a lightweight JavaScript library that is used to make HTTP requests. To some extent, it is similar to the JavaScript Fetch API but is far feature rich. Axios supports the Promise API that is native to ES6. As it is promise based, it helps us to utilize JavaScript's async and await to deal with asynchronous code without falling for callback hell. Axios also allows us to intercept HTTP requests and provides a wide variety of browser support. So basically in modern web application development, 99% of the web applications has to interact with the backend database. So how does that work? I hope till now at least once in your lifetime you have come across a website where you have to submit some data for some processing work. So in the front end, when you write some data, that is you put your own details and you hit on the submit button, the story doesn't simply ends there. An API is called and the data is sent to the server. In the server, when the data is fetched, it is processed and finally saved into the database. Now for a long period of time, your data remains in the database. And as per the requirement, the application owner or the organization where you are submitting the data can make use of it. So in React, there are certain ways by which we can make API calls. Though you have JavaScript's native fetch API, but using Axios will always give you an upper hand. Not only it allows you to make API calls, but it also allows you to intercept HTTP requests and provide a wide variety of browser support. So before you send any request, sometimes it so happens you have to attach some token for verification in the backend. Basically, with the token, your server will verify if the request is authentic or not. In those cases, Axios will help you to intercept the HTTP request, inject the token into it, and then send the data to the server. Now let's understand how we can download Axios and make use of it in our application. Axios doesn't come packaged with React when we use the Create React app toolchain. We have to manually add Axios to our project. To add Axios, we use npm install Axios. Okay, so one thing which you should make a note here, Axios is a third-party library for React. It does not come packaged with the React when we use the Create React app toolchain. So if we want to use Axios in our project, we need to first install it from the npm ecosystem. And how do we do that? We do simply by writing npm install Axios in our terminal and hit enter, which actually downloads the Axios library in our React application. So we have done enough of theory as of now. Let's go to VS Code and see some example. So in the example, I will show you how we can make HTTP GET request and HTTP POST request using Axios. So welcome to VS Code. Here we will see how do we make HTTP GET request using Axios. So first of all, we have to install Axios. Okay, here you can see I have already installed, but still I will show you how we can do that. Firstly, we have to open the terminal and then write npm install Axios and hit enter. Once we hit enter, the Axios library will be downloaded. Okay, so as it is already downloaded for me now, I won't download it again. Once the Axios library is downloaded and it is there in our node modules folder, we have to import Axios from Axios, and then we will import useState and useEffect hook in React. Remember, importing Axios is mandatory for this example, but useState and useEffect hook will actually help me to achieve what I want. Thereafter, we have defined an interface iPerson which says that what properties will a person object will have. Okay, so this interface iPerson have ID, name, username, email, address. Now this address is itself an object which basically contains street, suit, city, zip code, geo, etc. And there are a lot more properties as well. Thereafter, we come to the main part of our code base. We define a function component people, and thereafter we have used the useState hook to set up a local state variable. So if you are not sure what is useState hook, so remember useState hook basically takes in an argument which it sets as the default value of the local state variable, and it also returns a method to update the local state variable. Okay, so here this person's variable will initially contain this blank array, and the set person's method will actually help to update this person's local state variable. Okay, thereafter we have defined our use effect hook. So use effect hook is basically another hook which is provided in our functional component in React. So we will discuss about use effect hook later in one of our upcoming videos, but as of now you remember, whatever we write within this use effect hook which contains a blank array as the second argument, the code will run only once when the component gets rendered. Okay, so what I am doing here, I have written use effect and here I have passed the blank array. So within this block, whatever I will write, it will get executed only once in the initial render of the component. So when the component will render, using Axios, I will make a GET request to this following URL. Okay, and this URL will return me some data, and as it is promise based, I will use then. Now in the rest, we have access to the data that this URL has returned. And finally, this rest.data will contain a list of people that we will get from this URL, and the array will contain objects of this type iPerson. Okay, finally we set it to the person's local state variable using the setPersons method. Thereafter what we do, basically we use list rendering. We iterate upon this person's local state variable. For each person we display it as a list item. And if you remember, I have already told you in previous videos that whenever you render list in React, you must use a key attribute, and this key attribute has to be unique. So here we are using person.id. Finally, we are exporting this functional component. In our app.tsx, we are importing it and then we are calling it from within our parent app component. So if everything works fine, what should happen? Whenever this component will render, it will make a call to this URL and fetch some data which it will set in the person's local state variable, and thereafter we will iterate upon this person's array, and for each person we will see their name on the UI. Okay, so let's run our code and see if it's working. So we will write npm start to run our code. Let's wait for some time until our application starts. So as you can see, we can see the list of names that has been returned by the given URL. Okay, so this is how the HTTP GET request works. And if you're still not sure, let me show you once more. So in the network tab, you see currently there is no request, but whenever I will refresh it, it will make a HTTP request to this users. And see, we get the users object, basically an array which will contain 10 user object, and this object will be of type iPerson, which I have already defined. Now as of now we have learned how we can make HTTP GET request in Axios. Let's discuss how we can make HTTP POST request in Axios. So in the second example, I have created another functional component person. It also uses the useState hook to set up a local state variable person name and the setter method to update the local state variable. Thereafter we have two methods. One is handle name change. This method will be triggered whenever we will type something within this input field, and it will set the value that we have typed in our local person name variable. Thereafter we have another method handle submit. This will be called whenever we will submit our form that is displayed in the UI. That is, after we have typed the name, we will click on this submit button, and when we will click on this submit button, it will call this handle submit method. That is, you can see on the screen, on submit it will call this handle submit method, and this method will basically first prevent the default behavior of the event. Thereafter it will prepare an object, and then we will make the Axios post request to this given URL and pass this data. On receiving the response, we will just show an alert message to the user that the current name that you have typed is received from the API. In general cases, you have to show a pop-up to the user that is your request has been successful or the form data has been successfully submitted. But here, as we are doing a teaching learning session and not a production grade application, so I have just showed a simple alert message. Okay, And finally, we have exported this person component. And in the JSX code, there is nothing very fancy. We have a form. On submit, it should call the handle submit button. And there is an input field. Within it, on change event, this handle name change will be called. So what should happen if everything works perfectly? Whenever we will type something within this input field, it will get updated in our person name local state variable. And finally, when we will click on submit, this handle submit will be called and this API call will be made, and finally we will see an alert message on the UI. Now to run this code, let's import our person component and replace this people with person and run our code to see if it's working. So again we will go to terminal and write npm start to run our React application. Let's wait for some time. So as you can see, we can here see a simple form on the UI. So here I will write John Doe. Once I have written, when I will click on this add, what happened? That handle submit will be called and API call will be made. So in the network tab, you can see currently there is no API request that has been made. Now I am clicking on this add button. And when the API call has been made, we can see the same name that we have typed here in the alert message on the browser. Okay, so let's go back to our slide. So this was a pretty concise video on Axios and how we can make HTTP GET and POST request using Axios. So not only GET and POST request, but we can make put, patch and delete request as well. But just to keep this video short and concise, I didn't explain it right in this video. You will find how to make a put request and how to make a delete request in the blog. And I will post the link in the URL. Okay. So thank you for now. I hope you like this video. In case you like it, feel free to hit the like button and please subscribe to our channel. We are going to bring more videos in the future. For any queries, doubts, suggestions or feedbacks, feel free to post them in the comment section. We are going to reply. So thank you for now. See you in the next video. Bye.